The thing sitting in roughly two-thirds of American garages right now is one of the most misunderstood tools in automotive history. Most people think it's a lubricant. It isn't, not really. And because of that one misunderstanding, millions of drivers are using it wrong, missing the things it's genuinely brilliant at, and spending hundreds of dollars at dealerships on problems this $4 can solve in 60 seconds. Today, I'm fixing that. What WD-40 actually is, WD-40 was invented in 1953 by the Rocket Chemical Company in San Diego. The name stands for water displacement, 40th formula. They were trying to protect the outer skin of the Atlas missile from rust and corrosion, and on the 40th attempt, they got it right. A Convair employee reportedly liked it so much he snuck a few cans home, and the consumer product was basically born from that. Which is a great story and also means you are using missile technology on your squeaky door, which I think is objectively cool. Here's the chemistry in plain English. WD-40 is primarily a penetrating oil and a water displacer. It is not a heavy-duty lubricant. It doesn't have the film strength or viscosity to stay in place and keep metal surfaces separated under real load the way grease or a dedicated lubricant does. What it is genuinely exceptional at is getting underneath rust, corrosion, and moisture, breaking the bond between stuck surfaces and displacing water from places it has no business being. It also leaves a light protective film that slows future corrosion, and it's a mild solvent that dissolves certain adhesives and greasy buildup without attacking most painted surfaces. Understanding that is everything, because once you know what it actually does, you stop reaching for it in the wrong situations and you start seeing the right ones everywhere. And there are a lot of right ones on a car. Let's count them down. Hack 10. Unsticking frozen or seized door locks. You walk out on a January morning. You're already late. Your key goes into the lock and turns absolutely nothing because the mechanism inside has frozen solid overnight. So you stand there in your driveway, breathing on your key like that's going to help. It isn't. Here's what actually works. WD-40 sprayed directly into the lock cylinder before it freezes ideally, but also after. The water displacement formula gets into the tiny internal pins in tumblers, pushes the moisture out, and breaks the ice bond. Give it 30 seconds and work the key gently back and forth. In most cases, the lock frees up almost immediately. The reason this works so well is exactly what WD-40 was designed to do. Water got in there, it froze, and you need something that can get under that ice film and displace it. No other product on your shelf does that as efficiently. The pro move is to do this in the autumn before the first freeze of the year. A quick spray into every door lock and the trunk lock takes about 90 seconds and means you never have that January morning moment at all. Prevention is always cheaper than standing in the cold, feeling sorry for yourself. Do it once a year. Set a reminder if you have to. Hack 9. Removing tar, tree sap, and adhesive residue. From paint, spend any time parking under trees or driving on freshly laid roads, and your car ends up with spots and streaks that soap and water absolutely will not touch. Tree sap in particular is basically nature's epoxy. It hardens into a clear amber glue that bonds to your clear coat and laughs at a car wash. Road tar does the same thing. And if you've ever peeled a bumper sticker off a car that's been sitting in the sun for 3 years, you know That adhesive residue is its own special kind of permanent. With WD-40 dissolves all three. And this is one of its most legitimately impressive automotive uses because it does it without attacking the paint underneath. Spray a small amount directly onto the affected area and let it sit for about 30 to 60 seconds. Don't scrub immediately. Let the solvent chemistry do the work and soften the bond first. Then wipe with a clean microfiber cloth using gentle circular pressure. For heavier tear or thick sap, you may need a second application, but it comes off cleanly. Then wash the area with soap and water to remove the WD-40 residue and follow up with a wax or a paint sealant on that spot. One honest note here, always test on a small hidden area first if you've got an unusual paint type or a wrap. WD-40 is safe on standard automotive clear coat, but it's your car and a 30-second test costs nothing. Slower is faster when paint is involved. Hack 8. Silencing. Squeaky door hinges and hood struts. This one is almost embarrassingly simple, and yet I guarantee there's someone watching this right now whose car has squeaked every single time they open the driver's door for the last 8 months. And they've just accepted it as part of their life. You don't have to live like this. Door hinges squeak because the metal pivot point is dry, or because a light surface rust has formed on the hinge barrel, or both. WD-40 penetrates that surface rust, lubricates the pivot, and the squeak disappears, usually within 1 or 2 door swings. Spray it directly onto the hinge knuckles, open and close the door several times to work it in, and wipe away the excess. Same principle for hood struts that groan when you lift the hood, trunk hinges that protest every time you load groceries, and glove box hinges that creak like a haunted house every time you open them. One caveat worth knowing. WD-40 is a light lubricant, and it will eventually dry out or get washed away. For door hinges that are going to see heavy use, a follow-up with a slightly heavier lubricant, like a white lithium grease, sprays keeps them quiet longer. But as a fast fix and a maintenance spray, WD-40 is your first move, every time. Hack 7. Cleaning and protecting battery terminals. This one might be the most genuinely useful hack on this entire list, and also the one most people have never thought of, which is frustrating because the problem it solves is both extremely common and extremely annoying. That white and blue crusty buildup you see around your battery terminals is corrosion. It's a byproduct of hydrogen gas released during the charging process, reacting with the metal, and it is a surprisingly effective insulator. Enough of it and your car won't start. Not because the battery is dead, but because the electricity can't make a clean connection through the crust. People replace perfectly good batteries because of this, which costs them $100 to $200 for a problem a $5 intervention would have prevented. Here's the 2-part fix. First, disconnect the terminals. Negative first, always. Mix a tablespoon of baking soda in a cup of warm water and use an old toothbrush to scrub the corrosion off the terminals and the cable ends. Rinse and dry thoroughly. Then, and this is the WD-40 part, spray a light coating over the clean, dry terminals before you reconnect them. The protective film it leaves behind dramatically slows the return of that corrosion. Some people use petroleum jelly for this, and that works too. But WD-40 also displaces any residual moisture sitting around the terminal, which adds an extra layer of protection, especially in humid climates. Do this once or twice a year. Your battery will thank you. So will your wallet. Hack 6. Getting stubborn. Lug nuts and bolts moving. Every shade tree mechanic has been here. You're trying to do a simple job, rotating tires, swapping brake pads, something that should take 30 minutes, and one bolt won't move. You put a breaker bar on it, nothing. You put your entire body weight on it, nothing. It just sits there, rusted in place, silently mocking you. WD-40 is the first tool you should reach for before you reach for the heat gun, the impact wrench, or the language you try not to use around children. Spray it generously on the fastener and let it sit. This is the part people rush and shouldn't. Give it 10 to 15 minutes minimum. For badly seized hardware, spray it and come back tomorrow. Penetrating oil works by wicking into the microscopic gaps in the rust through capillary action, and that takes time. If you spray it and immediately start cranking, you haven't given the chemistry time to work. For really stubborn cases, a few gentle taps with a hammer after soaking helps the penetrant vibrate deeper into the threads. Then apply slow, steady pressure rather than a sudden jerk. Fasteners that have been seized for years sometimes need 2 or 3 applications over a few hours. One honest word. WD-40 is a good penetrant, but there are stronger, dedicated penetrating oils on the market for the most extreme cases. But for the vast majority of stuck hardware on a typical car, WD-40 applied with patience does the job. Hack 5. Protecting rubber seals and weather stripping. This one comes with an important distinction because rubber and WD-40 have a complicated relationship, and the internet has spread some genuinely bad advice about it. Your car's door seals, window seals, and weather stripping are made of EPDM rubber, a synthetic formulation that is specifically resistant to petroleum-based products. This is not the same as natural rubber, which petroleum products will degrade over time. So when people say, never put WD-40 on rubber, they are applying the right warning to the wrong material. On EPDM automotive weather stripping, a light treatment with WD-40 is actually beneficial. Here's what it does. Over time, weather stripping dries out and hardens, and when it does, it stops creating a proper seal. That lets in wind noise, water, and cold air. A light wipe of WD-40 on a cloth applied to the weather stripping keeps it supple, prevents cracking, and also prevents the seals from sticking to the door frame and eventually tearing when you open the door on a very cold morning. The caveat I promised. Do not spray it directly onto the seal from the can. Apply it to a cloth first and wipe it on sparingly. You want a light conditioning film, not a saturated soaking. And don't let it contact any rubber brake components, which is a completely different category and one we'll cover specifically in the What Not to Do section. Once or twice a year on your weather stripping, simple, cheap, and it keeps water out of your car, which is always the goal. Hack 4. Removing water from ignition systems and spark plug boots. Here's a situation that catches people completely off guard. You drive through a heavy rainstorm or a deep puddle, or you wash the engine bay a little too enthusiastically, and suddenly the car runs rough, misfires, or won't start at all. The engine is mechanically fine. The problem is moisture in the ignition system, specifically in the spark plug boots or the distributor cap on older vehicles. Electricity and water don't cooperate. When moisture gets into a spark plug boot, it creates a path for the spark to jump somewhere it shouldn't, instead of firing the plug correctly. The result is a misfire, rough idle, or a no-start condition that feels catastrophic and costs about $4 to fix. Pull back the spark plug boots one at a time. Spray a short burst of WD-40 inside each boot and into the cavity around the plug. The water displacement chemistry pushes the moisture out and leaves the boot dry. Reinstall the boot, wait a few minutes, and try starting the car. In most cases of moisture-related misfires, this solves it. This is actually one of the original intended uses of the product. Remember, water displacement is literally in the name, and it's one of the situations where nothing else works as cleanly or as fast. Keep a can in the car. If you ever get caught in serious flooding or heavy spray, this is your first diagnostic move before you call anyone. Hack 3. Loosening stuck brake, caliper slide, pins. This one is slightly more involved, but it belongs on this list because stuck caliper slide pins are behind an enormous number of brake complaints that get misdiagnosed, overcharged, and fixed incorrectly. Here's what happens. Brake calipers float on two slide pins that allow the caliper to move slightly as the pads press against the rotor. Those pins live inside rubber boots and are supposed to be coated in a special high-temperature grease. When the boots crack, the grease washes out, moisture gets in, and the pins seize in their bores. A seized slide pin means the caliper can't float properly, which means one brake pad wears down to nothing while the other barely touches the rotor. You get uneven braking, a car that pulls to one side, and a grinding noise that sounds expensive. A shop will often quote you a full caliper replacement at $200 to $400 per corner. Sometimes that's genuinely necessary, but a huge number of these cases involve pins that are merely stuck, not damaged, and WD-40 plus some patience fixes them. Remove the slide pin, spray WD-40 into the bore and onto the pin itself. Work it in and out gently if it has any movement at all. Clean everything thoroughly once it's freed, and then, and this step is not optional, re-grease the pin with proper brake caliper grease before reassembly. WD-40 is your extraction tool here, not the final lubrication. High temperature brake grease is what goes back in. Get that distinction right, and you've potentially saved yourself several $100s and a misdiagnosis. Hack 2, cleaning throttle bodies and sensor housings. I want to be precise about this one because there's a version of it that works and a version that causes problems, and the line between them is a specific product. Standard WD-40 is not a throttle body cleaner. Do not spray it inside a throttle body or onto mass airflow sensors or oxygen sensors. It leaves a residue that attracts dirt, and on sensitive sensor elements, that residue causes false readings and can trigger check engine lights. I've seen people make this mistake and wonder why their car runs worse after they cleaned it. However, WD-40 is genuinely excellent for cleaning the outside of throttle body housings, sensor bodies, intake manifold exteriors, and the general grime that builds up around these components in the engine bay. That baked-on oily dust layer that makes every engine look like it's been on an archaeological dig, WD-40 cuts right through it. Spray it on the external surfaces, let it sit for 30 seconds, and wipe with a microfiber cloth. It dissolves the grease and grime without attacking the aluminum or the plastic connector housings. Your engine bay looks 10 years younger in about 10 minutes, and a clean engine bay makes it dramatically easier to spot leaks, cracks, and wear because you can actually see the surfaces. If you want to clean the inside of a throttle body, use dedicated throttle body cleaner spray. That's the right product for that specific job. But for everything around it on the outside, WD-40 does it better and cheaper than most dedicated degreasers. Hack 1. The undercarriage rust protection trick. This is the one I put at number 1 because it has the highest dollar value of anything on this list, and virtually nobody does it. And the people who do it drive cars that last 20 years in climates that eat ordinary cars alive in 8. If you live anywhere that uses road salt in winter, and a significant portion of the country does, your car's undercarriage is in a slow war with a chemistry that it is currently losing. Road salt is one of the most corrosive substances your vehicle ever contacts. It gets packed into every crevice, every frame rail, every seam, and every suspension component, and it sits there and eats metal from the inside out. The rust you can see on the underside of an older car is the visible result of a process that started long before anyone noticed it. Professional undercoating from a dealership or a specialty shop runs anywhere from $300 to over $1,000, depending on the product and the vehicle. And some of those treatments are genuinely worth it for a new car. But here's what almost nobody tells you about the cars you already own. WD-40 sprayed onto the undercarriage in late autumn, before the first salt of the season, creates a protective barrier that dramatically slows the corrosion process. Get the car up on ramps, or use a floor jack and stand safely. Spray the frame rails, the suspension components, the wheel wells, the exposed metal brake lines, the subframe. You're not after a thick coating, just a thorough film over every exposed metal surface. Let it penetrate, and then you're done until spring. Do this every year before winter. Reapply after spring when the salt washes off, and you can actually inspect what's underneath. People who do this in Rust Belt states keep solid undercarriages on vehicles that would otherwise be completely rotted out by 10 years old. It genuinely extends the structural life of a car. And a car with a rotten frame is not fixable. It's just done. 3 or 4 cans of WD-40 once a year versus a car that needs to be scrapped early. That math is not complicated. What you should never use WD-40 on this matters as much as everything above it because the wrong application causes real damage, and I'm not going to give you a list of hacks without giving you the honest counterbalance. Brake rotors and brake pads, never. Any lubricant contaminating a braking surface reduces your stopping power. A little WD-40 on a rotor can extend your stopping distance dramatically. This is a safety issue, not a maintenance preference. If you accidentally spray it on a rotor, clean it thoroughly with brake cleaner before driving. Rubber drive belts and serpentine belts. WD-40 causes belts to slip, and a slipping serpentine belt takes down your alternator, your power steering, your water pump, and your air conditioning simultaneously. That's a bad afternoon. Oxygen sensors and mass airflow sensors, as mentioned above. The residue interferes with the sensitive measuring elements and causes incorrect readings that affect fuel delivery and emissions. Electrical connectors and fuse boxes. WD-40 is not designed for open electrical contacts. It can leave a residue that actually increases resistance over time. Use a dedicated electrical contact cleaner for those applications. Anything you intend to paint over, WD-40 residue prevents paint adhesion in exactly the way that makes painters want to scream. If a surface is getting painted, clean it with a proper degreaser and isopropyl alcohol first. Know what it does, know what it doesn't do. That combination is what makes this stuff genuinely powerful instead of occasionally destructive. Here's the honest closing thought. WD-40 is not magic, it's chemistry. And like any chemistry, it's useful precisely because it does specific things in specific situations. The people who get real value from it aren't the ones who reach for it on everything. They're the ones who understand what it actually is: a penetrant, a water displacer, a mild dissolvent, and a light corrosion inhibitor, and who use it deliberately in the situations where those properties solve a real problem. A $4 can used correctly is genuinely worth hundreds in prevented dealer visits. That's not marketing. That's just what happens when you understand the tool. If even one of these saves you a trip to the shop, do me a favor and subscribe and drop a comment telling me which one it was. I want to see which problems people are actually dealing with out there. And don't miss the next one. We're going into the fluid change mistakes that quietly destroy engines, including one that almost everyone gets wrong when they're topping off. You'll want to see that before your next service. Know what it does, use it deliberately, and don't let a dealership charge you $200 for a problem that has been sitting in your garage the whole time.